What happened in school that still pisses you off when you think about it today? When I was 16, I started living by myself. One of the things that still pisses me off years later about the first year or so that I lived alone is that, even though my marks were actually improving at the time, there were still teachers who told me they liked me better when I lived with my parents. Yeah, please teacher, tell me more about how I should have moved back in with my abusive parents. I liked you more when you were quiet and submissive. Frick that teacher. I went to a small private Christian school. Had 12 people in our senior class. We decided to skip an hour and go to Dennis for breakfast one morning. So it comes time to ditch and no one goes. Everyone chickens out. It was me and one other kid that ended up going. The other kid didn't make friends easily, and in such a small school it is easy to single someone out. He was kind of known as being troubled, weird, no friends, etc. Well, I coaxed him into ditching with me. Figured it would be a good experience for him and make him feel a little less alone at school. So we eat our breakfast and go back to school. Teachers and principal are wondering where we went, so we just tell them we went to go get breakfast. I get detention and this other kid gets suspended for 2 days. They said he was a bad influence on me. I hated that so much. I felt so bad I couldn't get him out of trouble. Sorry Ben. I get detention and this other kid gets suspended for 2 days. LOL. Somehow that made perfect sense to them. My teacher was teaching us that pi was exactly 3.14, with no other digits. I didn't know much about maths at the time, but I knew that pi had a lot more digits than that. So I said that pi wasn't exactly 3.14, which prompted the teacher to shout at me, "How could you think that? You only heard of pi this morning." When teaching pi for the first time, it probably is easier to tell kids that it's a terminating decimal, but this still annoys me. Freaking with the kids that are actually interested in something actually know something about it, because their questions might confuse others, is the worst thing to do. You're supposed to encourage these children. Jeez. A teacher told me I couldn't keep a bottle of water in my locker because it could be vodka or something. I told her she could smell it and check. She said, "That's not my job," and that I could just use the drinking fountain. I asked her if she would use the drinking fountain instead of her mug, the tap in the teacher's lounge. She wouldn't answer. Water bottles were banned at a school I worked at because a teacher was caught with a vodka bottle. When I was a sophomore in high school, this kid got really sick with mono. So bad he was hospitalized, and the principal announced over the whole school about this kid. He said if you wanted to make a card for him and his family, you could drop it off at the front office. Of course, this kid was an athlete and a popular kid. Well, about a week later I was hospitalized with histoplasmosis. It's an illness that attacks the lungs and dang near killed me due to the treatment I was taking. Well, I got better and went back to school after about a month of being in the hospital and in a coma. When I get back, no one realized I was that bad off. I asked if the school let everyone know and the school didn't. It just bugs the crap out of me, because I knew just about everyone in my class and no one knew I was in the hospital and could die. Not even one single card was sent to me. I cared but didn't care enough to make a huge stink about it. What really pissed me off was my crappy English teacher who failed me and treated me like crap when I got back. When she told me I would fail even though I had taken the final and got a B, I got up and walked out of her class after calling her a crap teacher. I took the class over again during the summer, but that still pisses me off how I was treated differently because I didn't play sports. I had a teacher who asked the class to identify the body's largest organ based off the definition of an organ that we had just learned. I raised my hand and answered correctly that it's the skin. The guy tells me I'm wrong and says it's the liver. I explained to him why my answer is correct, but he still tells me I'm wrong with zero explanation. This was also the guy who asked me to multiply 912 and explain how I arrived at the answer. I got the right number, but apparently my mental model, 910 plus 92, was wrong. I have a math degree now. Frick that guy. I assume you meant 9x12, and you did it mentally by breaking it down into 9x10 plus 9x2. I do the same thing. The guy is an idiot. I have a mole on my neck. Some bastards at school tried to burn it off with a magnifying glass during a biology lesson, and ended up setting my jacket on fire. They didn't even get in trouble for it. My 10th grade English teacher was going to law school, so she gave us tons of busy work which I hated. One day she wanted us to study our spelling words, the whole period. I pulled out a book and started reading. When she said something I told her I knew all the words. She pulled my chair out into the hallway, gave me a special Miss Smarty Pants test. She grabs her Black's dictionary and gives me 20 words phrases to spell, like habeas corpus, which I remember BC it's the only one I got wrong. A few weeks later we had to write an opinion piece on any topic. We wouldn't be graded on our opinion, just grammar, spelling, etc. I had just been to the first casino in Atlantic City. My dad knew somebody. We got to stay on a finished floor in a really nice suite and play pretend games in the casino. No real money yet. I opined that the casinos in Atlantic City would be filled by mostly middle class folks looking for a getaway. She wrote wrong all over it in red pen. Gave me a C for my opinion. Fast forward 10 years. I'm a paralegal. My boss is annoyed by this attorney. Asks me to take the call. It's her. My boss is on the line, listening. She and I agree I'll get her interrogatories by Tuesday. Monday she calls, flipping out. Then comes to the office. He tells my boss I'm a liar. I promised Monday. He said no. I was on the phone. Her face. Then I had to do it. I told her who I was. Karma is a beautiful thing. TL. Doctor teacher treats me like crap. A decade later, karma for the win. When I was in high school I transferred schools at the beginning of second semester. My old school was ahead of my new school when it came to math. For example, at my old school you took algebra a year before you would take it at my new school. So the new school puts me in the math class that corresponds with my grade level, but I'm bored because I already took this class at my old school. So my guidance counselor bumps me up a level. I was only in the class one day before the teacher decided I had missed too much and wouldn't be able to catch up, even though my old school had already covered a little more material. The best part? That day in class she had asked a question and none of her students knew the answer even though several of them tried. I answered the question correctly. 10 years later it still makes me mad I didn't fight harder to stay in that class. In my freshman year, I went on a trip with the orchestra. This was an expensive, 4-day-long trip, so I was going to miss that Thursday and Friday. The conductor gave us forms for all of our teachers to sign, and these forms made it explicitly clear that we were going to be missing these 2 days and that our teachers were not to assign us work from those days and expect it to be done, as we had a full schedule and would not have time to complete it. Well, my science teacher decided to ignore this warning and assign us work. She was one of those older, strict teachers who felt more against the students than for them. Regardless, I showed her the sheet where it said she was not to expect us to have it done the next Monday and she understood. Fast forward to next week. She asks to collect homework and openly questions why so many people didn't do their work. About 1/3 of the class was in orchestra with me. Confused, I went to her desk and politely reminded her that those of us in orchestra had been given a pass. Much to my surprise, she responded incredibly bitterly. She told me being out of town was no excuse and it should have been done. I knew I was fighting a losing battle, so I just said I would have my teacher talk to her. The next part is the killer though. After returning to my seat, 2 of my non-orchestra friends asked me what had happened. I began to explain when the teacher yelled this. "Oh, don't be a crybaby. You can cry all you want, a needy whale. But that doesn't change the fact that you should have done your work, but since you were too lazy to, you tried to make an excuse." I was okay with her not accepting my excuse. I could simply contact the director about that. But calling me a crybaby? I found that inappropriate. So I stood up and told her she had no right to say that as my teacher. We argued for a good 15 minutes while the whole class watched in awe as I stood up to this teacher that, quite frankly, no one liked. Finally, I stormed out of the room and got my dad to pick me up. The next day, I told my orchestra director, who notified the principal. The 0 in my gradebook disappeared, and the next week, she announced she'd be retiring at the end of the school year. TLDR. I went on trip, was told I didn't have to do homework. Teacher tried to make me do homework, called me crybaby for explaining situation to friends. I got teacher fired. Forgot my lunch one day in 3rd grade on a Friday. burgers and fries day. I ate my fries, drank my milk and left the burger. The lunch attendant literally forced me to eat my burger before she would allow my class to go back to the classroom. I took a bite with tears running down my face and spit it out immediately. I'm Hindu. Out of the office, you had a religious discrimination lawsuit on your hands, buddy. I'm not the most athletic person, but I love badminton. When badminton season rolled around, I asked the coach when tryouts were. She looked me up and down and said, "We don't need you." A kid in my class missed a few months of school because he was getting chemo, and when he came back, one of the old math teachers said something along the lines of, "You'd have better grades if you didn't skip so much class." The entire class collectively told her to go frick herself, and this kid stood up and said, "I have fricking cancer," and walked out as I walked by the classroom on the way to the bathroom. He died 8 months later of leukemia, right before graduation. Frick you, Ms. Cronin. Year 7. About 12 years old. Regular school. 2 students with vision impairments. Student 1 has had cataracts and related problems. Student 2 has an underdeveloped fovea, severe myopia, nystagmus, and other low vision issues. A handout is passed around. Student 1 can see it, student 2 cannot. Integration coordinator drags student 2 out of classroom to scream at her in the hall. Door open. That if student 1 can see it, then stop faking blindness for attention. Same teacher made fun of student 2 getting a cane. I once got detention in math class because I was helping a classmate with a problem while the teacher was helping someone else. He got POV I was talking and distracting her. Still pisses me off, and the little crap of a girl never spoke up even when she asked me for help. Infuriating. I was suspended twice for wearing shorts during the winter. I haven't ever been so angry at a school official as I was then. I failed typing class. I can type over 100 WPM. To make the teacher happy, I used the standard positioning, which basically just meant I had to think about what I was doing while taking the tests rather than flying through it. That netted me about 60 WPM. One day I got done with my work way early, since even 60 WPM was still better than most of the class, so for shoots and giggles I decided to go back and retake the test, typing how it's comfortable for me. I got almost 130 WPM. Needless to say, I was happy with myself, so I took a screenshot and saved it as a .bmp in my student folder on the school network drive. The next day I go into class and open up my network folder, and the file had been renamed to busted. I opened it up and added, in giant text, across the screenshot was also busted. Not more than a minute later the teacher comes by and pulls me out into the hallway. The stupid fricking C starts berating me for hacking into the school system and changing my test scores based on a fricking BMP file. She goes off on me about how she is going to take me down to the principal and get me expelled and blah blah blah. I was generally a good student, A's and B's. Didn't frick with anyone or cause trouble. I was flabbergasted. I was being accused of cheating by someone who clearly didn't know anything about what they were talking about. So I snapped, called her a fricking C, told her she was clueless and that you can't hack into systems and change scores with a BMP file. Told her to go ahead and fricking take me down to the principal's and I'll get her butt fired. It's been like 15 years and I was heated, so I don't remember all I screamed at her for. I think she realized she fricked up though. She didn't take me to the principal, didn't get me expelled. Instead she moved me to the shittiest computer in the class that lagged like crazy and didn't even have internet access. She also bitched at me every time I tried to talk to someone in that class for the rest of the year. Generally made my life heck in that class. I probably could have had her job because of that, but I was a kid and didn't realize. Nowadays it pisses me off but also amuses the crap out of me. People see me typing fast at work and it's silly to tell them that I failed typing class in high school. I failed typing class. Typing class. Mavis Beacon can go die in a fire. Obligatory change names forewarning. Chris was gay. Chris was somewhat flamboyant and did things like dress up as Lady Gaga for Halloween. Chris was bullied. A lot. Verbally and physically. Chris told his counselor. Chris told the security guards. Nobody, bar one security guard who moved to Japan, coolest freaking security guard ever, did anything. It was always "we'll do the best we can do" bulls. So Chris decides that it's for the best if he has some way of protecting himself from his attackers. He brings a taser to school. He's bullied again and again, but never pulls it out. He knows it's a last resort, too lonely if crap gets real frickin' bad. One of the people, I wouldn't call him a friend after what he did, who talked to him decided to tell the principal that he had a small taser. I get that Chris shouldn't have had the taser, but the fact that he was suspended for it, after he'd explicitly asked for help and asked for his abusers to be punished, I'm seriously still miffed. Ugh. We had a journalist come in and give a careers talk. Afterwards he asked if any of the students there also wanted to be journalists. I put my hand up. Afterwards, one of the teachers came up to me and said mockingly, "I'm just tickles and want to be a journalist." So mad. We had a huge midterm project that was going to be 20% of our overall grade. The subject was a person who had changed the world from their accomplishments. I spent over 40 hours of class time and library time working on my research paper, PowerPoint and huge folding poster, to only get a C. I gave up on that class after this, and half-assed the end of the year project. Just put in simple text responses, one picture etc. Got an A. Frick the public school system and giving teachers the right to grade as they please. On the last day of school, my 4th grade teacher announced how many books her best student read in library class. It was somewhere around 200. She then proceeded to announce the worst student to read 3 books all year in front of everyone. That student was me. It was my 10th birthday. The only time I ever got detention in school was in 8th grade, because I was walking back from lunch and the class bully, fat white guy, literally tackled me and shoved me into the wall. This was in full view of the hall monitor teachers and everyone else walking down the hall. I punch him in the face to get him off of me. He's literally crushing me against the wall, holding my throat, and the teacher somehow sees that and gives me 3 days of detention for disorderly behavior. Worst part was when my advanced math teacher walked in. I was 3 grades above in math, more than the normal 2. So I was one of only 2 kids in that class. And he tries to convince the teacher who reprimanded me, this butthole teacher who everyone hates so much that when he got to cast for his leg, everyone kicked it by accident as they walked down the hallway, that I wasn't a bad kid and this obviously won, this obviously won, this obviously won, this obviously. I actually had to apologize to the kid who physically and verbally abused me for 5+ years, and that only made things worse. Good riddance though, now a senior in high school, and the kid has a sub 1.0 GPA, very few friends, and may not graduate on time. Back when I was in high school we had these forms to get out of pay. It was for if we were doing a sport or going to some sort of gym class outside of school. One office handled it most of the time I was in school and no one ever had a problem. Then the vice principal took over the job. I couldn't find out when this stupid form was due. Well, turns out I missed the deadline. She finds me in the cafeteria during lunch and calls me over. I apologize, despite the fact that she couldn't get her crap together enough to establish a due date before this happened, and tell her I can turn it in tomorrow. She proceeds to scream at me in the cafeteria about how she's sick of how I think I'm freaking special and I'm not getting away with this. Then calls me into her office later to similarly berate me, although this time not in front of everyone at least. Calls my parents and starts telling them what a horrible kid I am. My parents proceed to lose it at this vice principal. They knew I had been trying to figure out when this form was due, and even if I hadn't, fine, tell me I have to take gym, but don't literally yell you think you're freaking special at me in front of the rest of the school in the cafeteria. Talk about unprofessional. Not only that, the gym teacher found out what happened and refused to enroll me in gym. Said she was being ridiculous and I could turn in the form. Suck a dong, Mrs. Adams. This is going to get buried, but whatever. My sister was in 2nd grade and was very small for her age. There was a boy in her class who had been held back a year and was big for his age, so he enjoyed beating the crap out of her for some reason. The kid had some behavioral issues, so each time my sister told the teacher would explain that the kid had issues and he didn't mean to hurt my sister. Blah blah blah. Nothing was done. My parents got involved and were trying to put the onus on the school to control this freaking hooligan of a kid so my sister could stop coming home with bruises all over. But nothing ever was done. I was in 5th grade at the time at the same school. At recess I went to check on my sister and sure enough, This freaking kid was bullying her again. So being quite a bit bigger than this kid, I ran up behind him, grabbed him by the shirt collar, and dragged him to the faculty with my sister trailing behind me with her nose bleeding and her clothes torn. My sister calmly explains that the big bastard was hitting her again. I calmly explained that this kid was beating the crap out of my sister and they needed to do something about it, or I would. The kid sulked and bitched and told the teachers I had come out of nowhere and attacked him. The faculty suspended me and called my parents to tell them that I was bullying this kid, who couldn't help his behavior, and if I did it again I would be expelled because they had a no tolerance policy for bullies. No freaking tolerance my butt. Luckily my parents took my side and my sister backed me up, but I was suspended and that little sucker tormented my sister for the rest of the year. I don't personally care that the kid had behavioral problems. Either he was controllable and can follow the same rules as anyone else, or he's a danger to himself or others and he shouldn't be there and allowed to beat the crap out of kids a fraction of his size with impunity. There's no reason that my sister deserved to get her butt kicked on a daily basis just because he didn't like her face. And there's no reason that I should have been suspended for simply grabbing the kid and taking him to be punished, as he freaking well should have been. Chaps my butt to this day. I had failed 6th grade. While in 7th, my principal offered for me to get moved back up where I belong if I got straight A's the first semester. I did except one class. Allegedly, I never turned in any homework. At the end of the year it was all returned to me graded and aced. Middle school art class. Tossing a friend's lunchbox over his head with another friend playing keep away. Teacher enters room. Tries to get me expelled for a hate crime because my friend is Jewish. Became a huge issue but luckily he went to bat for me and got it reduced to a week of lunch suspension. This happened to my son when he was 8. I got a call from his teacher that he had been acting up. Turns out he had been standing in line for an assembly, and as children will do he began to fidget. The teacher told him to straighten up so he tensed up his body and became rigid, then leaned against the wall as if he had fallen part way over. The teacher said don't get smart with me. To which he responded but this is school. I thought we were supposed to be smart. I was a proud angry dad that day. I was prangry. But this is school. I thought we were supposed to be smart. You're going to have grandkids. Your kid's already a dad. I arrived to school 2 minutes after the doors were locked due to my car not starting. Had to get a ride from someone else. So I had to run to the front of the school to get in the only unlocked entrance. As I walked in, going to my first class to take a quiz, I get yelled at by the front desk lady that since I was late, first time ever, I would have to sit this block out in ISS, in school suspension. Another girl walked in behind me and was able to go to class, because they knew her, because she was always late. I then tried to redo work in ISS and was told I couldn't do anything but sit there to think about what I did wrong. Still mad almost 10 years later. I was in 2nd grade in a Catholic school. I was standing in line heading for the cafeteria and lunch when I started playing air guitar. A nun just ripped into me and told me to never ever do that again. All the guys near me asked what I had done and all I could say was I didn't know. So move ahead 20 and years it all of a sudden hit me what she was talking about. She thought I was playing with myself. What a perv. This happened in 1st grade, so you can tell I hold a grudge. There were a bunch of kids gathering around up near the playground, so I walked up to see what was going on. As soon as I arrived a teacher grabbed me, along with a bunch of other kids as well. It turns out the group of kids were ganging up on someone, kicking dirt and throwing rocks at him or something. The teacher just freaking assumed I was doing it too, and I'll never know why. How could she make that mistake? I had just shown up. So anyway, the teacher sends us all to sit in timeout until lunch is over. And I argue to her that I wasn't even a part of the bullying. The gang leader, trying to get out of it, says I wasn't either and the teacher tells us both to be quiet. When lunch is over, I'm sent back to class, and the teacher notifies my own teacher about how I was bullying a student. My teacher says that's so unlike me, and that she's so disappointed. The good news is that teacher who got me in trouble must have been like 70 at the time, and that was 30 years ago, so she's definitely dead by now. Copied from another thread. When I was in 7th grade, we were about to be handed back math tests that we just wrote. My teacher was telling the class how everyone completely bombed the test, with grades in the 20s to 40s. I raised my hand and asked, "Everyone failed?" And she said yes. So me, being a straight A student with strict Asian parents, sat there like, oh crap. We then got the tests back, and turns out, I did perfectly fine. So I said to myself in relief, I didn't fail. My teacher then yells at me to get out of the classroom, and outside in the hallway, she proceeds to yell at me for disrupting the class by yelling I didn't fail, and making all the other kids in the class feel bad because they have to deal with failing grades. So she made me stay inside for recess and write a letter of apology, and sent me home with a letter to my parents about my behavior. TLDR, I was punished for not failing a test. I had a study hall instructor tell me that he was not allowed to read in study hall. If I didn't have homework, I needed to put my head down on my desk, not read a book I didn't understand, and asked for clarification. Ended up getting detention for reading Watership Down during study hall. It still lights me right the frick up to think about it. I'll never forget 7th grade history class. It was 9/11/08, so we were watching a documentary about the Twin Towers. Same one we watched every year since it happened. And we got to the part where people were jumping out of the top stories and a girl stated that would suck, jumping out and knowing you're gonna die, to which the teacher responded, well, the people's adrenaline in their body killed them before they hit the ground, quickly calling her out on such bulls. I said, well, in that case, why don't at least the teacher got wrecked though. Our teacher wanted to know how long each of us perceived a minute to be. This was 2nd grade. So she put on a timer and told us to raise our hands when we thought a minute was over. She says to start now, and I naturally start counting the seconds in my head. The exact moment I raise my hand because I think it's been a minute, her timer starts ringing. So she's convinced I waited for a ringing even though I never knew there would be one. She berates me for cheating and restarts the timer on silent with only me to participate. I'm now the center of attention, and when I raise my hand 15 seconds early this time, she tells everyone how obviously off my sense of time is, and everybody laughs. Frick you, Ms. Hawks, you dumb fricking bee. I hope you got cancer up your butt and died a slow miserable death while your weird fricking husband cried watching the life in your eyes dissipate and your skin shrivel and wither away. Thanks, I needed to get that out. In my high school there was a big rectangular block where all of our science classes were. The rectangle had a really short side and a long one. There is a one-way policy to reduce traffic around the block. Anyway, it's the first week of a new year and the science block is new, so I am not sure where my chemistry class is. The block is quiet and I decide I'll walk against the flow up the short side to check if my class is on the other long side of the block without having to go all the way around. I get halfway up the short side and suddenly hear a man screaming my name. I turn around to see Mr. Immican shouting at me, spit flying from his mouth as he does. Still screaming, he says it's a one-way system and when he calls me I should answer. I had headphones on and he had called me once and then went full nuclear when I didn't turn around. At this point I try to tell him that his response is massively disproportionate. I had headphones etc and tell him to calm down. By now we have gathered quite a crowd and in retrospect I think he didn't want to fight a losing battle publicly because he was way out of line, so he says come to my office at the end of the day. I come back and explain I wanted to find my class. It was quiet, I had headphones in, and your response was why over the top. His response was that rules should be followed regardless of circumstance. If I am on a roundabout at night and there are no cars, I still have to go around it the right way. Anyway, I am still not letting go and apologizing as I think he is out of line. He threatens me with the senior management team, the SMT, and I say I would be happy to go and see them. We leave his class and go to the principal's office by walking the wrong way around the science block. So if I'm on a roundabout at night. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.